What's up? My name is TheBentonReed, and welcome to another speed draw. I've spent about 160 hours so far playing Baldur's Gate 3. I'm on my third playthrough, finally getting around to a Dark Urge playthrough that I'm very excited about. And I knew from the second I finished my first playthrough that I was going to end up drawing something from this game. And after another playthrough and about a third, I've definitely discovered what it is that I want to draw the most, and it's obviously Myrkul, Lord of Bones, because I'm a sucker for a skeleton. So, let's jump in. So I'm starting out with my undersketch. I normally do this in a brighter color, but for whatever reason, I decided to just do it in white. I think when I started this piece out, I was thinking that I was going to do more of a ballpoint pen style, and I ended up going in a completely different direction, but that led me to do my undersketch in white rather than a bright primary like I normally would. I have a reference of a skull that I'm just drawing from, adding in his headpiece, and then refining the sketch a little bit, making sure I'm flipping the canvas, which is something I'm trying to get better at to make sure that my piece is at least somewhat symmetrical. It's still not perfectly symmetrical. And then moving in, I started with the kind of painterly style that I've been doing a lot, but I didn't really want to do that. So I found this brush that is, I believe, the graphite stick from the Mega Pack. And it feels really similar to Conte or pastels. And that's something that I really like using in my traditional work. So it felt very natural. It felt very nice to use. It's got a lot of grit and texture to it, and it also blends really nicely with the pressure sensitivity that it has. And so it allowed me to get a similar but slightly different style from the pieces that I've been doing recently. And I'm just slowly building the contours of this top half of the skull, starting with the basic shapes and then adding more detail, adding more contrast, and really trying to maintain that gritty texture of this brush that I'm using. And there's still some work to do to make sure that it's symmetrical. You see me flip it right there and recognize how lopsided his nose is. So I just completely draw over it and then just slowly adding more and more shadow. Moving down to the lower jaw, doing another refined sketch, getting that break in the jaw that Myrkul has in-game. A little less pronounced than it is in-game. I decided not to kind of blow up the teeth proportionally like the game model is. The game model has very big teeth, and I didn't really want to do that for this piece. I wanted to keep to a more human proportion. So the teeth are a little smaller than the game model, but still having that break in the center of the jaw. And again, just adding in that relief. You may have noticed, I can't tell if I skipped past it already, I drew parts of the teeth on the wrong layer. That will not be the last time that happens in this sketch. And it was looking a little too monotone, so I decided to go in and add a little bit of color with some blending layers, just to kind of get, I was attempting a kind of like torchlight effect. I knew that he would be getting some bounce lighting potentially from the massive gold headdress that I'll get to in a moment. And so I just wanted to kind of bring out some yellows and oranges in it. And now we're adding his hood, quote unquote. He kind of just has a strip of fabric draped over his head that is his hood. And fabric is normally something that I struggle with a lot. I've been trying to do some studies to get better at it, and they must be paying off, or this must just be an incredibly simple piece of fabric, because I was happier with this fabric than I have been with most of my fabric for a while. It just, the rendering came out really well, the shadows and the texture and color of it came out in a way I really like. And there's, I was trying to keep very gestural with this piece, but it ended up giving it a very free-flowing kind of color and texture to it. And then just adding some contact shadows from the hood so that it really does look like it's actually on top of the skull. A few extra highlights. And then it's headdress time. I started drawing it, and then I looked back at the reference photo I was using, and I realized it was in completely the wrong place in relation to the head itself. You can see me kind of move it up so that it actually hits the skull where it's supposed to. Just do a little undersketch. Use the symmetry tool for these horns. They're not symmetrical in the game model, but for the composition that I was doing, that's a very centered composition, I wanted them to be a little bit more symmetrical. They'll have some differences when I get to the shading, but the overall shape and placement of them is symmetrical. And then just like the skull, taking my shadow color and starting to lay in the contours. There's a lot of detail on this, and so you'll see me kind of sketch in these almost very fabric-like folds on the detail metal of the headdress. And then I go through and I add that really stark, bright highlight to kind of start giving it that sense of being a metallic material, even though it's a very grimy, old, dusty metal. It still has that metallic reflection to it that I wanted to kind of make clear, while also still maintaining the gritty texture of the brush that is everywhere else in the piece. And so I just slowly go in, build these shapes up, build in this rim, and it's really, again, just keeping it very gestural, keeping it very quick, not spending too long in any one spot so that I don't get too hyper fixated on any one spot and waste a lot of time. I see a little bit of a jump there where I forgot to restart my recording. I was streaming this at this point, and I started my stream, and then I forgot to start my secondary recording for the speed draw. So there's a little jump in progress, but it's just this exact same process as what I'm doing right now, adding in all the little details and just slowly building it up. You'll see me, I basically sketch out a line, add the undershadow, and then go back through and add the highlight and kind of blend everything back together. And I was really, really nervous about doing this headdress because it's very detailed in a way that I don't normally work. And I ended up finding a system that really worked very well for it and allowed me to do it without getting too deep into the details and just, again, keep it really free-flowing and instinctive. And now it's time to fuck with some colors. This one, I really spent a long time on the colors. The big thing was that I wanted the headdress to be a little bit darker, because you'll see me flip it into black and white every once in a while, like there. And the relative value of the skull and the headdress were basically the same in the original colors I chose. And I wanted to darken the headdress just a little bit so that that skull would pop forward. And so I ended up finding a slightly darker color that I liked without losing too much detail. And then I start working on the overall colors, and I really love very saturated shadows that exist in a red place or a blue place or just a very colorful space. And so I really brought that out and then just did this kind of very quick background with some shadow, adding some different filters to kind of play with the coloration. And just really, this whole process, every time I start doing colors, it's all just trial and error. And I realized right at the very last minute that I forgot to give him his gold tooth that he has in the game model, so I add that gold tooth in. And that is Myrkul, the Lord of Bones. I've heard some people say that they did not enjoy his boss fight. I loved his boss fight, especially second playthrough. I had Minthara. It was my second playthrough. I was going to see what happened. I had Minthara, gave her a speed potion, 4 divine smites in a row. He went down like a punk. Yeah. Hope you enjoyed. Again, my name is TheBentonReed. Like and subscribe for more.